In the heart of Chicago, where the skyline glittered with ambition and wealth, Elena Thompson's mansion stood as a testament to her empire. The sprawling estate with its marble columns and manicured gardens was more than a home. It was a fortress of success built from her tech startup that revolutionized data analytics. At 42, Elena was a widow. Her husband lost to a sudden heart attack 2 years prior, leaving her to raise their 8-year-old daughter, Lily, alone. The grief had carved deep lines into Elena's life, but it was Lily's quiet sadness that haunted her most. The once vibrant girl who used to chase fireflies in the garden and giggle over bedtime stories now clung to her mother with a fragility that broke Elena's heart. Determined to restore joy to her daughter's life, Elena, on the advice of her therapist, devised an unconventional plan, a competition to find Lily a new father. She carefully selected 5 men from Chicago's elite, each wealthy, accomplished, and seemingly perfect on paper. There was Charles Wentworth, a charismatic real estate mogul with a penchant for tailored suits and sharp rhetoric. Richard Hayes, a renowned cardiologist whose charm masked a calculating nature. Edward Langston, a hedge fund manager with a reputation for ruthless investments. Philip Monroe, a corporate lawyer whose silver tongue had won countless cases. And Victor Crane, an architect whose designs graced the covers of magazines. These men, all in their late 30s to early 40s, arrived at the Thompson estate with polished smiles and grand promises, each believing they could win the heart of both mother and daughter. But there was another figure in the mansion unnoticed by the candidates who would change everything: Marcus Jones, the black butler, who had been with the family for just 6 months. Marcus, at 31, was an enigma. Tall and lean, with a quiet grace that belied his strength, he moved through the mansion with the precision of someone who knew every creak of the floorboards. His deep brown eyes held a warmth that Lily gravitated toward, and his gentle baritone voice could soothe her fears like no one else's. Marcus hadn't always been a butler. A history teacher by training, he'd graduated from Morehouse College with honors, his passion for stories of resilience and courage shaping his classroom lessons. But life had a way of derailing dreams. When his father was diagnosed with kidney disease, Marcus left teaching to take up better-paying domestic work to cover medical bills. The Thompson estate, with its generous salary, was a lifeline, but it came with its own challenges. From the moment the 5 candidates arrived 2 weeks ago, Marcus felt their disdain. To them, he was invisible, a servant who didn't belong in their orbit. Charles Wentworth, the self-appointed leader of the group, was the most vocal. "A man like that shouldn't be so close to a child of Lily's standing," he remarked one evening in the dining hall, his voice dripping with condescension as Marcus cleared the table. The others nodded their agreement, cloaked in polite smiles, but their words cut like knives. "It's about propriety," Richard Hayes added, adjusting his cufflinks. "Children need to learn who belongs where." Marcus, polishing a silver candelabra nearby, kept his head down, but his jaw tightened. He'd heard such remarks before. Growing up in a small Georgia town, he'd faced worse. But the sting never dulled. Lily, however, saw Marcus differently. To her, he wasn't just the butler who brought her warm milk before bed or fixed her bicycle chain. He was the one who listened when she spoke about missing her dad, who taught her how to fold paper cranes during rainy afternoons, and who told her stories of Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass making history feel alive. One morning, as Marcus swept the foyer, Lily ran to him, her auburn curls bouncing. "Marcus, can you tell me about the Underground Railroad again?" she asked, clutching a stuffed rabbit. He knelt down, his apron slightly askew, and smiled. "Only if you tell me why you love that story so much, kiddo." Lily giggled, her first real laugh in weeks. "Because it's about people being brave like you." The words innocent and unguarded hit Marcus like a wave. He glanced around, ensuring no one overheard, then whispered, "You're pretty brave yourself, Lily." That moment, fleeting as it was, deepened the bond between them, a bond that didn't go unnoticed by the candidates. They saw it as a threat, not to their chances with Elena, but to the social order they cherished. "That butler's getting too comfortable," Edward Langston muttered during a private meeting in the library, his voice low but sharp. Lily's practically clinging to him. Philip added, his lawyer's mind already calculating ways to undermine Marcus. Victor, sketching a blueprint for a new project, chimed in, "It's inappropriate. A child like her needs role models of a certain caliber." Elena, meanwhile, was grappling with her own doubts. The competition had seemed like a brilliant idea at first. Let Lily spend time with these men, see who she connected with, and choose someone who could fill the void left by her father. But something felt off. Lily, who'd always been shy but perceptive, seemed withdrawn around the candidates. She'd hide behind Elena's skirt when Charles tried to dazzle her with tales of his yacht, or when Richard offered to teach her chess. Yet, with Marcus, she was different alive, curious herself. Elena noticed it first during a dinner, when Lily refused to sit next to Edward instead, scooting her chair closer to where Marcus stood, serving dessert. "Why don't you like them, sweetheart?" Elena asked one night as she tucked Lily into bed. Lily's hazel eyes, so much like her father's, flickered with hesitation. "They're mean to Marcus," she whispered, clutching her blanket. "I heard them say he doesn't belong here." The words struck Elena like a thunderbolt. She'd chosen these men for their pedigrees, their accomplishments, but had she overlooked their character? That night, unable to sleep, Elena made a decision. She contacted a security firm to install discreet cameras and microphones throughout the mansion. If something was amiss, she needed to know. She wasn't just protecting Lily, she was protecting the family they were trying to rebuild. The candidates, oblivious to the surveillance, grew bolder in their disdain. Charles, with his slicked-back hair and commanding presence, took every opportunity to belittle Marcus. One afternoon, as Marcus polished the grand piano, Charles deliberately knocked over a glass of red wine, letting it spill across the mahogany floor. "Oops," he said, smirking. "Better clean that up, Marcus. It's what you're here for, right?" Marcus, without a word, fetched a cloth and began scrubbing his face, impassive, but his mind racing. He'd learned long ago that silence was a weapon. Let people underestimate you, and they'd reveal their true selves. Richard, the cardiologist, was subtler, but no less cruel. He'd ask Marcus to fetch items from the far end of the estate, knowing it would keep him away from Lily. "We need to limit his influence," he told the others during a late-night poker game in the study. "The girl's too impressionable." Philip, ever the strategist, suggested documenting Marcus's inappropriate behavior, like the time he helped Lily with her homework. "It's not his place," he said, scribbling notes. Victor, sketching, idly agreed. "A butler shouldn't be playing teacher." Edward, sipping bourbon, added, "It's about maintaining boundaries. Lily needs to learn her place in society early." Lily, however, was oblivious to their schemes. To her, Marcus was a safe haven. One sunny afternoon, as the candidates lounged by the pool plotting their next move, Lily tugged Marcus into the garden. "Can we play explorers?" she asked, her voice bright with excitement. Marcus, setting aside his tray of iced tea, grinned. "Only if I get to be the navigator." They spent an hour pretending the rose bushes were a jungle lily, laughing as Marcus narrated their adventures through ancient ruins. From the terrace, Charles watched, his eyes narrowing. "This is getting out of hand," he muttered to Richard. "That man's overstepping." Richard nodded, his mind already spinning a plan. We'll make sure Elena sees him for what he is, just the help. They didn't know that every word, every glance was being recorded. Elena in her office watched the footage with growing unease. The candidates' polished exteriors were crumbling, revealing a pettiness she hadn't anticipated. But it was Lily's question later that day that solidified her resolve. Hiding behind the office door, her small frame barely visible, Lily whispered, "Mommy, why do those men hate Marcus? He's my friend." Elena's heart clenched. She knelt down, brushing a curl from Lily's face. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm going to find out." As Lily hugged her, Elena's gaze hardened. She'd chosen these men for their status, but status meant nothing if it came with cruelty. Marcus, the man they dismissed, was becoming the key to unraveling their true natures. And as the cameras rolled, capturing every whispered insult and calculated slight, Elena knew this competition was no longer just about finding a father for Lily. It was about exposing the truth and protecting the one person who'd brought light back into her daughter's life. The Thompson mansion buzzed with a quiet tension as the second week of the competition unfolded. The 5 candidates, Charles Wentworth, Richard Hayes, Edward Langston, Philip Monroe, and Victor Crane, had settled into their roles as suitors, each vying for Elena Thompson's approval, and more importantly, the affection of her 8-year-old daughter Lily. But their polished exteriors couldn't mask the growing resentment they harbored toward Marcus Jones, the black butler, who had unwittingly become the center of Lily's world. Marcus, with his calm demeanor and knack for storytelling, had a way of making Lily feel safe, a stark contrast to the candidates' forced attempts at charm. The men led by the domineering Charles saw Marcus's bond with Lily as an obstacle, a threat to their carefully curated images. In the oak-paneled library, far from the prying eyes they didn't yet know were watching, they gathered to plot. "We need to be strategic," Charles said, swirling a glass of scotch, his eyes glinting with purpose. "This butler is getting too close to the girl. It's inappropriate for someone of his position." Richard, the cardiologist, leaned back in a leather armchair, his fingers steepled. "It's not just inappropriate, it's disruptive. Lily's supposed to be bonding with us, not the help." Edward, the hedge fund manager, nodded, his sharp features tightening. "We need to show Elena he's unfit, maybe even dangerous." Philip, the lawyer, jotted notes on a legal pad. "We can document his oversteps, small things like how he lingers around Lily. It'll look like he's crossing professional boundaries." Victor, the architect, sketching idly in a notebook, added, "A few well-placed incidents, and Elena will see him for what he is, just a servant with no place in her daughter's life." Their voices, laced with entitlement, echoed in the room, unaware that Elena's newly installed cameras and microphones captured every word. Marcus, meanwhile, went about his duties with the same quiet precision he always had. Polishing silver in the dining room, he overheard snippets of their conversations, whispers about keeping him in his place and teaching Lily about social order. He'd faced this kind of prejudice before, growing up in a small Georgia town where his mother, a seamstress, was often dismissed by the wealthy families she served. But Marcus had learned to turn underestimation into an advantage. At Morehouse, he'd studied history not just to teach, but to understand the resilience of those who'd faced worse than whispered slurs. Now, as he folded napkins with meticulous care, his mind was already working. He knew the candidates were plotting, and he wasn't about to let them dismantle the trust he'd built with Lily. That evening, as he brought Lily a glass of water before bed, she looked up from her book, her hazel eyes wide with worry. "Marcus, why don't those men like you?" she asked, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Marcus knelt beside her bed, his voice soft but steady. "Some people, Lily, don't understand that kindness doesn't come with a title or a paycheck. They're scared of what they don't know." Lily frowned, processing his words. But you're my friend. You tell the best stories. Marcus smiled, tucking her in. And you're mine. Now want to hear about Sojourner Truth before you sleep. Lily nodded eagerly, and as Marcus recounted the tale of the fearless abolitionist, he saw her fears melt away, replaced by the spark of curiosity he loved to nurture. The candidates, however, were escalating their efforts. Charles, with his knack for manipulation, devised a plan to undermine Marcus's credibility. The next morning, as Marcus served breakfast, Charles accidentally knocked a crystal vase off the table, letting it shatter on the hardwood floor. "Careless of me," he said, his tone mock-apologetic as he glanced at Marcus. "You'll handle that, won't you, Marcus, without a word?" Fetched a broom, his face unreadable. But Lily, sitting at the table with her oatmeal, saw the exchange and frowned. "Why do you keep breaking things?" "Mr. Wentworth?" she asked, her voice small but piercing. Charles's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. "Just an accident, sweetheart. Don't worry, Marcus is here to clean it up." The other candidates exchanged knowing glances, their plan to paint Marcus as incompetent taking shape. Later that day, Richard took a different approach. He approached Lily in the garden where she was drawing with chalk, and offered to teach her about the human heart. "It's important to learn from someone with expertise," he said, casting a pointed look at Marcus, who was trimming hedges nearby. Lily, unimpressed, shrugged. "Marcus taught me about Rosa Parks yesterday. That was cooler." Richard's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. "History's fine, but science is for important people like you." The subtle jab didn't escape Marcus, who kept his focus on the hedges, his hands steady but his mind alert. Elena, in her office, watched the footage from the previous night's library meeting with growing unease. The candidates' words weren't just petty. They were calculated, dripping with a prejudice she hadn't anticipated from men of their stature. She saw Charles's smug grin as he spoke of putting Marcus in his place. Richard's agreement that Lily needs proper influences, and Philip's meticulous notes on how to frame Marcus as a threat. It was disturbing, but what troubled her more was Lily's behavior. The girl who'd started smiling again, thanks to Marcus's stories and quiet kindness, was retreating into herself around the candidates. Elena noticed how Lily flinched when Edward tried to pat her head, or how she avoided Philip's attempts at conversation. Determined to uncover the truth, Elena hired a private investigator, Sarah Mitchell, a former detective with a knack for digging into the lives of the elite. "I need backgrounds on these men," Elena told Sarah over a secure call. "Everything lawsuits, scandals, anything they're hiding." Sarah, her voice crisp, promised results within days. "People like them always leave a trail," she said. Elena hung up her resolve, hardening. She'd chosen these men for their success, but success didn't guarantee character. Marcus, unaware of Elena's investigation, was building his own defense. Late that night, after the mansion quieted, he called his younger brother David Jones, a rising lawyer in Atlanta, who specialized in civil rights cases. "David, I need your help," Marcus said, his voice low as he stood in the small room he occupied in the mansion's annex. "These guys are coming for me, and I need to know who I'm dealing with." David, who'd seen Marcus face prejudice his whole life, didn't hesitate. "Give me their names and I'll dig. Guys like them always have skeletons." Marcus listed the candidates, his memory sharp, from years of observing people. Charles Wentworth, Richard Hayes, Edward Langston, Philip Monroe, Victor Crane. "They're rich, powerful, and think they can bury me." David chuckled darkly. "They don't know you, brother. I'll have something by tomorrow." Marcus hung up his gaze, drifting to a photo of his father on the nightstand. He'd taken this job to save his dad, but now it was about protecting Lily and himself from men who saw him as less than human. The next day, the candidate's plan took a darker turn. Philip, with his legal expertise, suggested staging an incident to make Marcus look untrustworthy. They chose Lily's favorite sketchbook, a gift from her late father filled with her drawings of animals and stars. During lunch, while Marcus was in the kitchen, Edward slipped the sketchbook into a drawer in Marcus's quarters. Later, as Lily searched frantically for it, Charles discovered it during a staged inspection. "Lily, look what I found," he said, holding up the sketchbook with a theatrical frown. It was in Marcus's room. Lily's eyes widened, confusion clouding her face. "Marcus wouldn't take it," she said, her voice trembling. "I left it on my desk." Charles knelt to her level, his voice dripping with false concern. "Sometimes people take things they shouldn't, sweetheart. It's not your fault." Marcus, entering the room with a tray of drinks, froze as he saw the scene. He met Lily's gaze, his heart sinking at the doubt in her eyes. "Lily, I'd never touch your sketchbook," he said calmly, but the candidate's smug expressions told him the damage was done. Victor, standing nearby, added, "It's understandable, Lily. Some people see nice things and can't help themselves." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. Elena, watching the footage later, felt her blood boil. The candidates' manipulation was blatant, their prejudice thinly veiled as concern. She saw Lily's confusion, Marcus's restrained pain, and the candidates' satisfaction. But what struck her most was Marcus's response. Instead of defending himself loudly, he took Lily aside after dinner, sitting with her on the porch swing. "Lily, you know me," he said, his voice steady. "You know I'd never take something that matters to you." Lily, clutching her sketchbook, nodded slowly. "I believe you, Marcus." But why would they say that Marcus hesitated, then chose his words carefully? Some people think they can win by making others look bad. But the truth always comes out. He pulled a small book from his pocket, a children's biography of Thurgood Marshall. "Want to read about a man who fought for truth?" Lily's face lit up, and as they read together, Elena watched through the camera, her heart torn between anger and admiration. Marcus wasn't just protecting himself, he was teaching Lily resilience, a lesson no candidate had thought to offer. By the next morning, David called Marcus with the first piece of dirt. "Charles Wentworth's got a history," he said, his voice tense with excitement. "He settled a lawsuit last year for defrauding investors in one of his real estate deals. It's public record, but he buried it with hush money. I'm digging into the others now." Marcus nodded, his resolve strengthening. "Keep going, David. These guys think they're untouchable, but they're not." Meanwhile, Elena received Sarah's initial report. Charles's fraud case was just the tip of the iceberg. Richard had lost his medical license in Ohio for negligence. Edward was under investigation for insider trading. Philip had a string of complaints for workplace harassment, and Victor was facing a lawsuit for plagiarizing the rival architect's design. The revelations shook Elena, but they also clarified her path. The competition wasn't just about finding a father for Lily. It was about exposing the rot beneath the candidates' polished surfaces. As the candidates plotted their next move, unaware of the noose tightening around them, Marcus continued his work, his quiet strength a beacon for Lily. And in Elena's office, the screens flickered with evidence, each frame bringing her closer to a truth that would change everything. The Thompson mansion, bathed in the golden light of a Chicago afternoon, seemed deceptively serene as the third week of Elena Thompson's competition to find a new father for her daughter Lily reached its peak. The 5 candidates, Charles Wentworth, Richard Hayes, Edward Langston, Philip Monroe, and Victor Crane, believed they were in control, their plan to discredit Marcus Jones, the Black Butler, gaining momentum. Their latest stunt with Lily's sketchbook had sown a seed of doubt in the 8-year-old's mind, and they were confident that a few more calculated moves would convince Elena to fire Marcus and secure their path to her heart and her fortune. But the mansion's walls, wired with Elena's discreet cameras and microphones, were silently documenting their every word and action, exposing a web of prejudice and deceit. Marcus, with his quiet resilience and sharp intellect, was not the defenseless target they assumed. Armed with his brother David's legal expertise and a lifetime of navigating systemic bias, he was preparing a counterstrike that would turn the candidates' arrogance against them. Elena, meanwhile, was piecing together the truth, her trust in the candidates eroding as evidence of their true characters piled up. The stage was set for a confrontation that would unravel their carefully crafted facades and reveal the depth of Marcus's strength. In the grand dining room, the candidates gathered for breakfast, their conversation cloaked in false civility, as Marcus served coffee with his usual precision. Charles, leaning back in his chair, shot Marcus a smug glance. "You're awfully quiet today, Marcus," he said, his tone laced with mockery. "Everything all right?" Marcus, arranging a tray of pastries, met Charles's gaze with a calm nod. "Just doing my job, Mr. Wentworth." His voice was even, but his eyes held a glint of defiance that made Charles shift uncomfortably. Philip the lawyer seized the moment to push their agenda. "Lily seemed upset about her sketchbook yesterday," he said loud enough for Lily sitting at the table's end to hear. "It's unfortunate when trust is broken." Lily's fork paused mid-air, her hazel eyes flickering toward Marcus, who kept his focus on the tray. The girl's confusion was palpable, and the candidates exchanged satisfied glances, believing their plan was working. But Lily, her small voice cutting through the tension, spoke up. "Marcus didn't take it." "I know he didn't." Her words, firm despite her uncertainty, caught the men off guard. Richard, the cardiologist, forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart, but sometimes we misplace things and need to be careful who we trust." Marcus, setting a pitcher of orange juice on the table, caught Lily's eye and gave her a subtle wink, a silent reassurance that steadied her. The exchange, brief but powerful, didn't escape Elena, who watched the scene unfold on her office monitor, her jaw tightening at the candidate's manipulation. Later that morning, Marcus slipped away to the annex, his small room a haven from the mansion's undercurrents. He called David, his brother, whose voice crackled with urgency over the phone. "Marcus, I've got more," David said, his tone grim. Richard Hayes lost his license in Ohio for prescribing unnecessary procedures to pad his bills. Patients sued, and he barely dodged criminal charges. Edward Langston's hedge fund is under SEC scrutiny for insider trading. He's been dodging subpoenas for months. Philip Monroe settled 3 harassment lawsuits from former assistants, all alleging racial bias. And Victor Crane, he's being sued for stealing a design from a smaller firm. These guys are dirty, and I've got the paperwork to prove it. Marcus leaned against the wall, his mind racing. "Send me everything, David. I need to be ready." David hesitated. "You sure you want to take them on? These guys have money connections." Marcus's voice was steel. "They're hurting Lily to get to me. That's where I draw the line." Hanging up, Marcus glanced at a worn copy of The Souls of Black Folk on his nightstand, a gift from his father. He'd faced men like these before, men who saw his skin and job as a reason to dismiss him. But he'd learned that knowledge and patience were weapons, and he was ready to wield them. The candidates, unaware of the storm brewing, escalated their sabotage. Philip, with his legal acumen, proposed a bolder move, planting a valuable item in Marcus's quarters to frame him for theft. They chose a small painting from Lily's room, a watercolor of a horse her late father had painted for her. During a moment when Marcus was in the kitchen, Edward slipped into Lily's room, removed the painting, and hid it in Marcus's closet, tucked behind a stack of linens. That afternoon, as Lily played in the garden, Victor noticed the painting was missing. "Lily, where's your dad's picture?" he asked, feigning concern. Lily's eyes widened, and she ran to her room, searching frantically. Charles, seizing the opportunity, led her to Marcus's quarters under the pretense of checking everywhere. When he found the painting, he held it up with a dramatic sigh. "Lily, I'm so sorry. It was in Marcus's room." Lily's face crumpled, tears welling as she clutched her stuffed rabbit. "Marcus wouldn't do that," she whispered, but her voice wavered with doubt. Marcus, entering the room after hearing the commotion, saw the scene and understood immediately. "Lily," he said softly, kneeling beside her, "I promise you, I didn't touch your painting." His voice was steady, but the pain in his eyes was unmistakable. Charles, standing over them, smirked. "It's not about blame, Marcus. It's about what's best for Lily." Elena, watching the footage in real time, gripped her desk, her anger boiling over. The candidate's cruelty wasn't just directed at Marcus, it was hurting her daughter. Marcus, however, had anticipated this move. Years of teaching had honed his ability to read people, and he'd noticed Edward's nervous glances when passing his room earlier. After calming Lily with a story about her painting, maybe it just wanted a little adventure. He excused himself and checked his closet, finding the painting exactly where he suspected. Instead of confronting the candidates directly, he took a photo of the painting in place and sent it to David with a message, "They're framing me. Need a witness." David, quick to act, contacted a former colleague, Rachel Carter, a journalist with a Chicago news outlet known for exposing corruption. Rachel agreed to attend a dinner Elena was hosting that evening, posing as a family friend, but ready to document any slip-ups. Marcus also reached out to his old mentor from Morehouse, Dr. Henry Ellis, a historian who'd taught him the power of evidence. "Dr. Ellis, I need advice on handling a setup," Marcus said over the phone. Ellis, his voice warm but firm, replied, "Use their arrogance against them. Marcus, let them talk, they'll hang themselves." Marcus nodded, his plan taking shape. He'd let the candidates dig their own graves, but he'd make sure Lily was shielded from the fallout. That evening, Elena hosted a formal dinner in the mansion's grand hall. The candidates dressed in their finest, unaware of the trap closing around them. Rachel Carter, seated discreetly at the table, observed their interactions with a reporter's keen eye. Charles, emboldened by the painting incident, took the lead. "Elena, we're concerned about Lily's environment," he said, his voice smooth as he sipped his wine. "Certain staff members are overstepping and it's affecting her." Philip nodded, adding, "We've documented instances of inappropriate behavior, items going missing, boundaries crossed." Elena, her face a mask of calm, asked, "Can you be specific?" Charles, sensing an opening, leaned forward. "The painting in Marcus's room, for example. It's troubling that Lily's treasures are ending up in the wrong hands." Marcus, serving dessert nearby, kept his expression neutral, but his pulse quickened. Lily, seated next to Elena, tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, Marcus didn't take it." "I know he didn't." Her voice, small but fierce, silenced the table. Elena's eyes locked onto Charles, her voice cold. "That's a serious accusation, Charles. Do you have proof?" Charles faltered, his confidence wavering. "It was found in his room," he said weakly. Marcus, seizing the moment, spoke up. "Ms. Thompson, I found the painting in my closet this afternoon and took a photo before moving it. I sent it to my brother for safekeeping." He pulled out his phone, showing the time-stamped image to Elena, who nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving Charles. The tension in the room was palpable, but the candidates didn't know they were being recorded. Philip, trying to salvage the situation, said, "It's not just about the painting. It's about professionalism, ensuring Lily's exposed to the right influences." Rachel, sipping her water, jotted a note, her presence unnoticed by the candidates. Elena, her voice sharp, replied, "And what are the right influences? Philip, men who plant evidence to discredit an honest employee?" The candidates froze, their faces paling as Elena's words hit home. Charles, recovering, tried to deflect. "Elena, you're misunderstanding. We're only looking out for Lily's future." But Lily, her courage rising, stood up, her small hands clenched. "You're not looking out for me. You're mean to Marcus, and he's my friend." Her outburst stunned the room, and Marcus, standing quietly, felt a surge of pride. "Elena," her heart swelling, reached for Lily's hand. "Sweetheart, you're right, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth." Rachel, catching Elena's eye, gave a subtle nod, her pen moving faster. The candidates, sensing the shift, exchanged nervous glances, unaware that David's evidence and Sarah's report were already in Elena's hands. That night, after Lily was tucked in, Elena met with Marcus in her office. "I saw everything," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. "The painting there lies, all of it. I'm so sorry you've been through this." Marcus, his expression calm but resolute, replied, "It's not new to me, Ms. Thompson, but I won't let them hurt Lily." Elena nodded, her respect for him deepening. "I've got evidence on them, lawsuits, scandals, and my investigators digging deeper. But I need your help to end this." Marcus met her gaze, his voice firm. "Tell me what you need." As they planned, David sent Marcus the final batch of documents, each one a nail in the candidates' coffins. Charles's fraud, Richard's malpractice, Edward's financial crimes, Philip's harassment, Victor's plagiarism, all laid bare. Elena, watching the footage again, saw the candidates' true faces, not suitors, but predators cloaked in privilege. The dinner had been their undoing, their arrogance captured for all to see. As Marcus left the office, he paused at the door. "Miss Thompson, whatever happens, keep Lily safe. She's stronger than they think." Elena smiled, her resolve ironclad. "So are you, Marcus." The stage was set for a reckoning, and the candidates, basking in their false victory, had no idea their world was about to collapse. The grand hall of the Thompson mansion was awash in soft candlelight, the air thick with anticipation, as Elena Thompson prepared to host the final gathering of her competition to find a new father for her 8-year-old daughter Lily. The 5 candidates, Charles Wentworth, Richard Hayes, Edward Langston, Philip Monroe, and Victor Crane, sat at the polished mahogany table, their tailored suits and practiced smiles masking the unease that had crept into their postures since the previous night's dinner. They believed their plan to discredit Marcus Jones, the Black Butler, who had captured Lily's heart, was nearing success. The staged theft of Lily's painting had sown doubt, and their carefully crafted narrative of Marcus's inappropriateness was, they thought, airtight. But the mansion's hidden cameras and microphones had captured their every move, and Elena, armed with damning evidence from her investigator Sarah Mitchell and Marcus's brother David Jones, was ready to turn the tables. Marcus, with his quiet strength and unwavering dignity, stood at the edge of the room, serving wine with a calm that belied the storm about to break. Lily, seated beside her mother, clutched her stuffed rabbit, her hazel eyes darting between Marcus and the candidates, sensing the weight of the moment. Tonight, Elena would not only end the competition, but reveal a truth that would reshape their lives and teach a lesson far greater than any of the candidates could have imagined. Elena rose from her chair, her emerald dress catching the light as she addressed the room. "Gentlemen, thank you for being here," she said, her voice steady but edged with steel. "Before I announce my decision, I'd like to share some findings." Charles, the real estate mogul, flashed a confident smile, adjusting his cufflinks. "Of course, Elena. We're all ears." The others nodded, their expressions a mix of curiosity and smugness. Elena gestured to a large screen behind her, and the room dimmed as it flickered to life. The first image was a headline, "Wentworth Settles Fraud Lawsuit in Multi-Million-Dollar Scam." Charles's smile vanished, his face paling, as the article detailed his shady real estate deals. "This is outrageous," he sputtered, rising from his seat. "These are lies." Elena's gaze was unflinching. "Is it Charles?" "My investigator, Sarah Mitchell, verified every word." She nodded to Sarah, who stood near the door, her presence a quiet threat. The screen shifted to Richard Hayes. His medical license revocation in Ohio splashed across a news report, followed by Edward Langston's SEC investigation for insider trading, Philip Monroe's harassment lawsuits, and Victor Crane's plagiarism scandal. The candidates' faces crumpled, their polished facades cracking under the weight of their exposed secrets. Elena clicked a remote, and the screen played a montage of footage from the mansion's cameras. Charles's voice echoed, sneering, "A man like that shouldn't be so close to a child of Lily's standing." Richards followed, "Lily needs proper influences, not the help." Philip's calculated suggestion to frame Marcus with the painting rang out, and Edward's agreement, "It's about maintaining boundaries," sealed their guilt. The room fell silent, the candidates frozen as their own words condemned them. Lily, her small hand gripping Elena's, whispered, "Mommy, they're so mean." Elena squeezed her hand, her voice softening. "I know, sweetheart." She turned to the candidates, her tone icy. "You came into my home to win my daughter's heart, but instead you targeted an innocent man because of his race and his job. You tried to break my daughter's trust in someone who's shown her nothing but kindness." Philip, ever the lawyer, tried to deflect. "Elena, this is an invasion of privacy. You had no right to record us." Elena laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "In my own home, where you plotted to destroy a man's life, you have no ground to stand on." Sarah stepped forward, her voice crisp. "I've shared these findings with my contacts at the Chicago Tribune. The story runs tomorrow. Elite suitors exposed in racist plot against Butler. Your reputations are finished." Rachel Carter. The journalist Marcus had enlisted stood nearby, her notebook filled with quotes from the evening. Charles, his face red with fury, pointed at Marcus. "This is your doing, isn't it? You manipulated this," Marcus, setting down a tray, met Charles's gaze with unshakable calm. "I didn't need to manipulate anything, Mr. Wentworth. You did that yourselves." His words, quiet but piercing, hung in the air. Elena turned to Marcus, her expression softening. "Marcus, you've shown more integrity in 6 months than these men have in their lifetimes. You've cared for Lily like she was your own, and you've faced their cruelty with dignity." She paused, her eyes locking onto his. "Will you marry me? Not just to be a father to Lily, but to be my partner in building a family based on love and truth." The room went still, the candidates' jaws dropping. Lily gasped, her face lighting up as she ran to Marcus, hugging his legs. "Please, Marcus, be my dad." Marcus, caught off guard, looked from Lily's beaming face to Elena's earnest one, his heart hardened by years' prejudice, softened at the sight of the family he'd come to love. "Miss Thompson, Elena," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'd be honored." Lily squealed, jumping into his arms, and Elena smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. The candidates, humiliated, tried to salvage their dignity. Richard stammered, "You're choosing the butler." "Over us?" Elena's voice was firm. "I'm choosing a man who's proven his worth through actions, not wealth. Marcus has a degree in history from Morehouse, taught kids for years, and put his life on hold to care for his sick father. He's more accomplished than any of you." Victor, his voice shaking, tried one last jab. "This will ruin your social standing, Elena." She laughed softly. "My standing is with my daughter, and the man who loves her. You're the ones who've ruined yourselves." As the candidates left the mansion, their phones buzzing with calls from furious colleagues and clients, alerted to the breaking scandal, Marcus, Elena, and Lily stood together in the hall. Rachel, her story already taking shape, shook Marcus's hand. "You've given me a front-page piece," she said, smiling. "But more than that, you've shown what integrity looks like." Sarah added, "I'll make sure their legal troubles follow them." The mansion, once a battleground, felt lighter, as if the truth had cleansed it. That night, after Lily was tucked in, Elena and Marcus sat in the garden, the stars above mirroring the hope in their hearts. "Thank you for believing in me," Marcus said, his voice quiet. Elena took his hand. "Thank you for showing me what really matters." Lily, sneaking out of bed, ran to them, giggling. "Are we a family now?" she asked. Marcus lifted her onto his lap, smiling. "Yeah, kiddo, we're a family." In the months that followed, the candidates faced the consequences of their actions. Charles's real estate empire crumbled under renewed fraud allegations, forcing him to sell assets to cover settlements. Richard's medical practice shut down after patients abandoned him. Edward's hedge fund collapsed amid the SEC's investigation, leaving him bankrupt. Philip lost his law license, and Victor's architectural firm folded under the weight of the plagiarism lawsuit. Their social circles, once their armor turned their backs, the Tribune's exposé ensuring their names became synonymous with disgrace. Meanwhile, Marcus thrived. Elena, recognizing his passion for education, funded a community history center where Marcus taught children about resilience and justice, using stories of figures like Thurgood Marshall and Rosa Parks to inspire them. Lily, now 9, blossomed, her confidence growing as she helped Marcus at the center, her drawings of historical heroes decorating its walls. Elena, balancing her tech empire, joined them on weekends, her love for Marcus deepening as they built a life rooted in mutual respect. One sunny afternoon, Marcus and Lily organized a community event at the center, inviting families to share stories of overcoming prejudice. Lily, standing on a small stage, spoke to the crowd, her voice clear. "My dad Marcus taught me that it doesn't matter what someone looks like or what job they have. What matters is how they treat you." The audience applauded, and Marcus, watching from the sidelines, felt a lump in his throat. Elena, beside him, whispered, "She's right, you know. You've changed us." The event ended with children reading their own stories, each one a testament to the power of kindness over division. As the sun set, Marcus reflected on the journey. He hadn't sought revenge, he'd simply lived his truth, letting the candidates' cruelty undo them. The lesson was clear: true worth lies in character, not status, and love builds bridges where prejudice builds walls. The story of Marcus, Elena, and Lily became a beacon in Chicago, shared in schools and community centers, as a reminder that dignity and compassion triumph over hate. Marcus's center grew, offering scholarships to underprivileged kids, and Lily, inspired by her new father, dreamed of becoming a historian. Elena, once defined by her wealth, found purpose in supporting Marcus's mission, their partnership a testament to love's power to heal. As they stood together at the center's opening ceremony, Lily holding their hands, Marcus spoke to the crowd. "We all face moments where the world tries to tell us who we are. But we get to choose who we become through kindness, through truth, through love." The crowd cheered, and Lily hugged him, whispering, "You're the best dad." The lesson woven through their journey was undeniable. No amount of wealth or power can rival the strength of a heart that loves fiercely and lives honestly, rewriting the rules